Hey, Picasso's freestyle. Let's do it. Hey, eating a couple wings with a couple kings. They're my favorite things. Hey, hey. That's all I got. I'm not a good freestyle rapper.
Wait, hold on. Let me think for a second.
Folks, you do not have to be a good freestyle rapper to enjoy the best deals on the best pizza in Western New York. Go to Picasso'sPizza.net to do that. But you know, if it's hump day, if it's Wednesday, that can only mean one thing. It is another edition of What's TrainWreck Watching. And again, unless you've been buried in your own multiverse, you know we are going deep into Marvel's What If. We are now into the 7th episode in this 9-episode season. So without further ado, let's get him in here. The Majka man, Jake Majka. The Casali Files, Joe Casali. Gentlemen, how are we doing on this Wednesday, and how are our initial reactions to this week's installment of What If?
Oh, man, we fantastic, of course. I mean, as we say every Wednesday, it's wonderful to be a Marvel fan because each week we get a new addition to the greatness of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And, you know, today I'm just feeling Ragnarok vibes all the way through. I mean, this episode was a hell of a lot of fun. It reminded me a lot of my favorite Marvel movie, Thor Ragnarok. And just, you know, a good time all around. So I'm excited to talk about this one with you guys.
This episode reminded me how terrified I am of both my mother and my grandmother. Yeah, that's pretty much that's what I took away. I was like, scared for something I did I haven't done yet today to get scolded about it later. That's what this episode gave me. It was a fun episode though. It was definitely a turn from the last couple weeks where we've had to deal with some crazy shit. This is a little bit more lighthearted with our boy Thor, but it was fun, and they've been hitting like I don't think any of us have truly like disliked an episode yet. Like, I mean, we have our favorites here, but they've all been pretty solid. So interested to see how you guys feel about today's installment.
Of course, we'll get into it and where we rank this week's episode of What If versus the other 6 of the season so far. But let's get into it. So obviously, the storyline in this What If verse, what if Thor was an only child? What if Odin never adopted Loki when they assaulted Jotunheim? What if he returned him to his parents? Thor grows up a little bit naive, a little bit of a party animal. I mean, it's not really anything to say. He literally calls himself the prince of the party. And of all spots, Casali, he lands in Sin City, Las Vegas. What a great start to this epi.
Absolutely. I mean, just like how every episode starts, it dives deep into a world of one of our favorite movies. This time it was 2011's Thor that, you know, obviously, and I mean, straight off the bat, it started off pretty much the idea of what if Loki and Thor were never brothers? What if Odin never saved Loki from Jotunheim? And I mean, if you really think about it, not even just Thor's history, the first film, but the entire MCU in general, Avengers, all of that, it changes the game for everything. So right off the bat, I think this definitely started off as very big, left to the center of, you know, this, we're going to really take a toll and go down a different role here. But yeah, and, you know, and obviously in that film, he landed in Mexico to fall in line with Jane Foster and Darcy. But this time, yes, he landed in Sin City and just wanted to start the party. I mean, even right when he landed first in Vegas, and everyone was shocked, and to see an alien come to the planet, at least that's what they were referring to him this time around. Yeah, it goes to show how Thor's attitude has changed. You know, I mean, the history of what Thor was going through within that first film was he was, you know, constantly bickering, not really bickering, but just having like a kind of duel with his brother when they were kids. And then once, you know, he got the light side and Loki got the dark side, obviously, in that film. And that kind of really put pressure, not only pressure on him, but just, you know, he learned a lot having Loki by his side. And, you know, obviously we knew what that happened and the outcome through Loki's side. But it really goes to show how much of an impact that was to see Loki not involved at all. You know, Thor just wanted to party. You know, it really changes the whole outlook and game for what he wanted to do. he wasn't he didn't have it on his mind, at least I guess, to be a good ruler for Asgard. He was just he wanted to just party and just try and have a good time.
One of my favorite things of this show is trying to figure out what movie Casali has on in the background. That's just a little sidebar. But one of my favorite things about this episode was me and my friends had a conversation in a group chat the other day about knowing when the party's done, knowing when to go home. I don't think Thor's one of those guys. Clearly he's not one of those guys. He doesn't know when the party ends. Maybe everything's just a party with Thor around. I mean, he got pretty much everybody in the universe, everybody we've seen in the MCU was down on Midgard, just having a great old time. I mean, he seems to be able to bring the people together. But it was an interesting take to see just what Thor would be like. Like, Thor was pretty immature in the original Thor movie, but this kind of took it to a whole different level. A guy that would you even trust him? Like that first movie when he goes into Jotunheim, does that, like, would you even trust him to do something like that? Like, would he even be like, is he even focused enough to go in and have a battle? Like, I feel like that dude is not battle ready at all. Like, he's just trying to travel around. He's clearly causing destruction around the universe, as we find out later in the episode. But yeah, it was a very much the moment for me. I was like, you know what? Thor's the guy that someone needs to tap him on the shoulder and be like, it's time to go home, buddy. It's time to go home.
Seriously, this episode was all about vibes. You're right. It was the vibe of Thor 1 with his naivety and his like selfishness, mixed with Iron Man 2, where he just kind of wanted to party and have everyone around and like do party tricks with his superpowers and everything. Very interesting. Yeah, so he's partying in Vegas. Real quick, who's your guys' favorite character to see in Vegas when he brought the whole crew in?
Oh man, I think what was kind of cool too is you really had to pay attention to notice everything. I mean, I love seeing the Grandmaster show up. Jeff Goldblum was always, a saint, but I mean, I got to also give it to Howard the Duck. It's always great to see Howard the Duck.
The most underused guy in the MCU, Howard the Duck. I don't remember what the gold people's name are from Guardians of the Galaxy, but that was the biggest shock to me because they did not seem like they were, they didn't seem like they were fun people to be around in that movie, and they were down there having a grand old time with Thor. So I don't remember the gold people's name. Maybe one of you two, maybe not. I'm sure we're going to see them in Guardians 3 with the way that ended. But they were the most surprising by me. And Howard, you took that one. I mean, we just need more Howard in our lives, especially with Thor.
Always need more Howard in our lives. I was glad two things. One is Drax just pukes no matter what. He likes to pull the trigger, no doubt about it. Yeah. And then so I couldn't remember the Grandmaster's name. It was escaping me because it's hard not to like look at a guy and just be like, that's just Jeff Goldblum in this movie. So I went to look him up, and I was happy to see that he'll be reprising his role in Love and Thunder. So I didn't know that, but it already stacked cast in Love and Thunder, and we're gonna get some Jeff Goldblum man group. So a lot to look forward to there. So he's partying, and of course, out of the Avengers, I mean, there's not many that can go toe to toe with Thor, and one person who can go toe to toe with Thor, but not in this universe. Thor's brother from another mother. All of a sudden, the biggest surprise to me was seeing Loki in full size as a frost giant. I completely suspended that, completely forgot that he like never really truly grew up into his physical form. I mean, it was crazy seeing him and seeing them actually be friends, seeing them have a bond was an interesting alternative to what we have. Not to say that they don't have a friendship and a bond, but it's a lot more fleeting in their main multiverse relationship, Casali.
Yeah, no, I honestly, that was probably the biggest shock and surprise of the episode for me too. One of the things that I didn't have a tough time with, but it was just very like a big choice of like, okay, so Loki is still involved, but he's still a frost giant, which obviously would make sense because Odin never, freed him from Jotunheim. But to see, that he was, he actually had a big bond with Thor, which again was lovely, and that only grew, within the films, within like Ragnarok verse and stuff like that, where Loki and Thor were really actually bonding. But yeah, to see it like straight from the start was a bit like, okay, like this is what we're doing, this is where we're going, which again is the power of the show, that it shows how much the multiverse really can change things and lead different stories, and they can play with any idea that floats in their head as far as the writer's side. So I thought that was cool. And I mean, of course, it was great to see Loki, Tom Hiddleston back. Of course, anytime you put him in, like, take my money. You know, I mean, he is that character, whether he's a frost giant or, you know, the Norse god himself. But yeah, it was definitely, I wasn't expecting it, but it was a treat. It was nice.
I want like a buddy cop Jotunheim version of Loki and Thor running around the universe together as like big homies. Like that's what I want. The second I saw that and saw them getting along, I was like, yes, this is what we need. This is what If is for. Give me like a whole 5-episode run of them causing some chaos in some foreign planet and getting stuck there and all kinds of shenanigans. I was with it. It was they've had good chemistry since the beginning. I mean, that Thor, right out of Thor, going back to Thor 1, I'll give this point credit to my brother. He said that it's one of the best, like, pulled from a comic book fight is that Thor and Loki fight. And I think that's just one of the examples of how incredible these two were in their role to like kind of represent that friction, the brotherly fighting, and also the times that they've kind of gotten along when they needed to or when they didn't to. So it's been a cool relationship to explore throughout all the movies, and to have this little twist on it was really neat. And I definitely want to see more of Frost Giant Loki. He seems so much happier in his pure form. Yeah,
I mean, and not even that too. It's always great to see them kind of mess around and obviously have that bond, like you said, Jake. But I mean, you know, in the real world as well, Tom Hiddleston, he was actually up for Thor. He did the audition for it before they even got Hemsworth. So, you know, obviously, I think, you know, it just fits. They have a wonderful chemistry, like you said, and it's always great to see them. Both of them are perfect at their roles. But yeah, it's always interesting.
Shout out your brother Jake for sure, because that is probably because I can see the battle right now between Loki and Thor at the end of the road. I would also argue that out of the first phase of the Infinity Saga, Thor 1 did the most to try and be like frames out of a comic book constantly.
Oh, absolutely.
Sure. Maybe they thought it was. I think that basically as they continue to venture into space, and whether it was the Guardians of the Galaxy, they wanted to take those chances, and obviously they've paid off in spades as you're getting stuff like What If now and all these different things. And speaking of different things, someone we've only gotten recently, Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel gets called in by what is it? What is it? Director, not assistant director.
Maria Hill.
Yeah, but isn't it like managing director? Whatever. I don't know what the first part is. Acting director.
Yeah, there you go.
That's what I was saying. Gets called in by acting director. And this battle between Captain Marvel and Thor, I mean, my goodness, I get that it's animated. They can do a couple things they couldn't normally do with IRL. But my goodness, what a battle between Captain Marvel and Thor. And I would dare say, best battle we've seen one-on-one in the MCU so far.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, too, gearing up for acting director, a kind of little goof because this episode had a lot of stuff in it. You know, Fury was obviously involved, and he was the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., but he got knocked out to the side by none other than Korg, one of my favorite characters, voiced by the great Taika Waititi, who directed Ragnarok and is directing the new Love and Thunder. But yeah, I mean, I think it's great that, not that, you know, it's so difficult because I think Captain Marvel within the movies, she did have her time to shine, but I think the way that she was brought into the MCU was not only very late, I mean, you could say easily, but it was just like her first film was done right after Infinity War. The first time we ever saw her within the universe was right after the snap in a post-credit scene. So she already had so much weight on her shoulders for not only her film, Captain Marvel, to realize, like, okay, let's see her relationship between Fury and Captain Marvel. How did we get this? How does this make sense? We want some context to this, at least one, 30-second scene. And then after Captain Marvel, in the post-credit scene in Captain Marvel, when the Avengers, after the dusting and everything, they got her back. They used the device to try and get her back. She comes and even though she does save the day, yes, she did save Tony Stark in Endgame and whatnot. Then again, she kind of went off to other worlds to see what was going on, and not until the ending of that movie is when she showed up. So it was, I wouldn't even say brief, but it just has been, it was kind of wonky for her to come into the MCU even at this point, because
Agreed.
we grew up with all these characters. So having these shows to showcase, because this was also not the first time that they used the device to call her. Didn't they do it also in the zombie episode too? Was it that one, or was it the other episode? I forget which one it was.
It was not zombies.
Was
when
Hank
Pym
Pym.
was killing everybody.
Okay, yeah.
What if they never became the Avengers, for sure?
All right. So, but still, that's it's cool that they get to use this. I wouldn't even say plot device, but it's cool that they get to utilize her now, and also kind of re-establish those scenes of using the pager and calling her, because obviously that has a lot of weight too, because she gave it to Fury at the end of Captain Marvel of like, if you need me, but for like the real big boy stuff, then use it. And then obviously,
I want to talk about the pager real quick too. Before you go on the pager, they bring it out and call it the last resort. And this is just my question. I'm not poking fun, but why is it in this big like case, and then she just takes it out and hits the button? Like, shouldn't there have been some protocol or something? Like, was I the only one who was a little underwhelmed when she just like whipped it out and she's like, I did it, or the signal sent? I thought it was a little bit like wonky.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, it definitely. I mean, it wasn't like in at the end of her film. When the Avengers did it, they hooked it up
epic,
to
epic. That's what I was.
I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. Yeah.
The machine, Maria Hill. She's just like, oh, we're good.
Yeah, we're good. Like what happens if like it just falls out like her pocket or something, and like it accidentally hits it like on the road, and then she shows up for nothing. But yeah, so and that's and obviously that's the thing too. A lot of people, after Captain Marvel, a lot of people were kind of complaining, saying like, okay, well, how come she wasn't called for Ultron, or when Loki came to Earth, or all the other stuff? So yeah, it does kind of get on its feet a little bit, but again, it's cool that they get to utilize it, and obviously the fights and stuff between her and Thor was just magnificent. I honestly think it's some of the best animation we've gotten within this show, What If, because it kind of showcased and had a little bit like I don't know that much anime or what the great artists overseas do and whatnot within these shows, but it kind of reminded me of that kind of style. Like it kind of was cool, like colorful, like battles and stuff. It really brought it to life, like it was a part of the actual MCU.
Yeah, so Maniac, you'll like this. I think that Captain Marvel is essentially the Roman Reigns of the MCU in the fact that she has been super protected to start, and for good reason. She's like the closest thing that Marvel really has to Superman, and that's always put these movies in any movie. Justice League, you've seen it. You've seen any Superman movies, and now with Captain Marvel, it puts them in a tough position because like they're OP, like she can come and destroy. Like that was you mentioned it, Casali, with her like being a plot device, and she isn't. But that was the big complaint about Endgame, right? Was that she kind of just comes in.
She literally had to chill.
Comes in
she
and
literally had to chill in this episode and basically save because she's so OP. Like, sorry, I can't go because I'm so OP.
So that's the tough part with her, but the thing is that they've only given us these little spurts because they want us to know, like, no, listen, like whatever's coming up, like we know she's going to be heavily involved in the next couple phases. Obviously, in the comics, she has run the Avengers. I think she might be running them not right now, but in one of the last couple years of the iteration, she was running the Avengers. So she is like, she's
spoiler alert, Shang-Chi. She's like on the onboarding process for the new ones for sure.
Exactly. Like heavily involved in the process they're going with there too. So it's coming, and we're gonna see her use that power at some point. But I think this What If episode even was like giving us a little glimpse of how powerful. But she's still been super protected in that no one's really touched her. She got the big fight against Thanos and looked really good there. So they're trying to prop her up. They're trying to show us like, hey, this girl is a big deal. Like she is going to be a big deal going forward for the time being, and you need to pay attention when she's on the screen.
No doubt about it. And speaking of paying attention, Natalie Portman, Jane realizes that if we're going to stop Thor, we have got to get his mom to pay attention because Frigga went out for some drinks with the ladies once Odin entered the Odin sleep, which, by the way, that was some legit Odin sleep. Whatever was going on in Thor 1, I don't know what was happening, but that Odin sleep that we saw in this episode, it looked like harmonic. It looked very nice. It looked like, like a good time. But Thor commits the ultimate dastardly act. He lies to his mother, and she's on the way to Midgard. She doesn't believe him. I mean, what'd you think of this? This is a pretty crazy sequence. You got Thor, who's got all the power in the world, literally can't be defeated, but he's brought to his knees because he's worried about appeasing his mother and making sure that she's proud of him, making sure that she's not upset with him. And he goes to this crazy scene where he basically summons the power of Odin to command everyone to help him because his mom's mad at him. I mean, just a scenario, I think like you said, Micah, where like this is like what if was made for. So Thor could scream at everyone on Midgard about his mother being potentially mad at him.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's just I think that's just the power of parenthood. I mean, we've seen it before, whether it's good or bad. Good, obviously, like I mean, throughout the movies and stuff. Really, fatherhood and motherhood has been big themes within the films and the show, and bad, obviously, with what Gamora and Nebula went through with Thanos. So that really shows the power, of family. That not to sound like Vin Diesel right now from Fast and the Furious, but that's the power of family within these movies. That it really, what builds these heroes. So the fact that Frigga comes in and literally says Thor, like, no, like cut it out, stop, like is really. I mean, she's powerful already. She throughout the film, she had a big role in Endgame, I think. Also, she had a really powerful scene with Thor when they went back in time and Thor got to see her, again, because she passed away in Dark World. So not only she is a big, powerful, god, because some consider a witch, whatnot, within the movies and stuff, but it just shows like, I mean, the power of a mother's love and really, what she has the power to really get through Thor, because Thor wasn't, he just wanted to do what he wanted to do and that was it. But, it really took her, strength to make him stop and realize what you're doing is wrong and you need to, get everything back to normal and really be, the king, the leader that, you were always destined to be. So I thought that was very, very powerful.
I was kind of half expecting like Earth to just still be in shambles. Like I was impressed at the pickup job Thor got because he was calling on the Allfather, spoiler, and I was like, is he gonna answer? Like he's not gonna help this dude clean up. Like why would he do that? That was just a little side note though. Yeah, like everything. I agree with everything you said there, Casali. It's been, and really like that's been Thor's the main relationship. Like we thought it was Odin, thought it was Loki, but clearly the thing that kind of turned him and into how he ended up and going through the struggles that he was going through at Endgame and everything was losing his mother. And because, whatever sense of responsibility he felt bringing Jane there and Thor too and everything. So that it was nice to revisit that relationship in Endgame and really nice to see a very different version of it, but still to see how much those two like care about each other in this universe.
Seriously, there was a lot of carry on. I was thinking that when he was spinning the hammer around and he needed to clean up, that like I was thinking about Thor 1 when he was explaining the hammer, how it could be used to like construct or like help or stuff. Like it wasn't always a weapon of destruction or whatever. But I was surprised we didn't see it there. So obviously we get the falling action of the episode. We get Thor. So Frigga arrives. And, like, Thor is, like, having, like, an outdoor lecture, like, 301 class. It was pretty unbelievable. Marvel, pretty funny with that sequence. And, yeah, I thought, just looking at the couple of scenes they gave Thor and Jane Foster in this episode, honestly, and we discussed this in the pre-show, better job of the romance they did in the 3 films.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well,
from my opinion.
I honestly I agree with that too, and it's kind of because I mean the film side also was a little too crazy. I mean, not to I'm about to get really nerdy here, but obviously Thor came along, Kenneth Branagh came in and directed it, and hired Natalie Portman and hired Hemsworth as Thor, and they built their relationship. And then Thor 2 comes along, Dark World. Now, one of the directors that was actually signed up for Thor 2 was none other than Wonder Woman's Patty Jenkins. Yeah. She actually had the reins for a little bit. And I don't know whether it was, I mean, that I'm a little fuzzy. I don't know whether it was the script discrepancies or whatnot, but she ultimately let go of the project. And from what I understand, Natalie Portman was a huge supporter of having Patty Jenkins on, because this was also way before she blew up with Wonder Woman, but she still had a bunch underneath her belt, Monster and whatnot. So I think Natalie Portman was a big supporter of her, at least from what I hear. And when she got let go, she was very upset with it, but she still signed the contract to do Thor 2. So after Thor, Natalie kind of left. She wasn't involved in Ragnarok or the Avengers movies. She obviously, Jane was talked about. I mean, you guys remember that little gag in Ragnarok where they go to Earth and the girl in the city said to Thor, like, sorry, Jane dumped you. So it was kind of like that, where she she just wasn't coming back to the movies. And but Ragnarok happened, and one thing led to another, and she actually came back for Endgame, which shocked everybody. I remember watching the premiere of Endgame on YouTube before getting ready to see the movie, and seeing Natalie Portman on the red carpet. I was like, wow, like, she's back, like, it's awesome. And I mean, I grew up loving Natalie Portman in the prequels and all that.
Padme, let's go.
Of course. I mean, she's one of my favorite parts of the prequels, and she's done a lot of other great things also. But so it was cool to actually have her back. And then they had the scene when, obviously, I said this before, when Thor goes back in time to Dark World era in Endgame, and we see a little bit of her in the background, but from what I understand, that was actually her. It wasn't a double or whatnot. And obviously now she's signed on to come back in Love and Thunder when Taika comes back, when that movie comes out, I believe next year. So I loved, just having her back. It was great to see her back playing this role, because this is her. Like, this is her role. And even her relationship with Darcy, Kat Dennings, I think just works. They're, it just, the relationship, it's great. And her and Thor, it's a wonderful, beautiful thing. So I think not only that, obviously this episode did show a lot more than we got in the movies, but I also think that it kind of had to, because we lost so much within the movies. I think that's my opinion, at least. So, I mean, and it was just sweet, and it was great to see them back and stuff, and it got me just so excited to see the live action stuff, next year. So, it's very, very sweet.
I mean, that's a great point, Casali. I'm gonna let you go in a second, Micah. But I gotta say, if you ship Thor and Lady Sif, let Casali have it in the comments.
Oh, let him have it for sure. I'm a big Sif fan. I'm not gonna lie. Not a big Sif fan here. I don't know if I'm putting you guys on the game here or not at all, but in the comics, I'm glad you mentioned that Jane is showing up in Love and Thunder, because she is Thor in a recent comic.
Lady
Jane
Thor,
Foster Thor, Lady Thor, whatever that she ends up as. And so I think one of the things that What If has tried to do has, at least in some of these episodes, has kind of give us threads that we should still be looking out for. Like these, like, whether it's been super connected to the movies or not, they've given you at least a thread of something to look forward to going forward. I think last week's episode, where it's Killmonger and Tony and talking about Tony's legacy, and that's kind of what ultimately it was about, like Tony trying to set up his legacy, right? He wanted Killmonger to take over and do all this stuff. We have an Ironheart show coming up, and an Armor Wars show coming up that's pretty much exactly addressing Tony's legacy. So I think that's one example of it. And I think this is another one, is exploring that relationship. And I mean, the movie's called Love and Thunder. Like, we know that is probably going to be a focus of this movie. is his relationship with Jane. I'm assuming also, since the Guardians are gonna be around there too, we're gonna see some Star-Lord, Gamora stuff involved in there too. I think that these relationships are gonna get explored a little more.
I'm so
now.
excited for that movie.
Yeah, it's gonna be amazing. It's gonna
I
be
can't
incredible.
wait.
There's a lot to get explored as we continue to explore here on What's TrainWreck Watching here on TrainWreck Sports. Make sure you're following Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Instagram. We've got it all. But then just when you think it ends, all of a sudden a portal opens and out comes. I had to do a triple rewind on this. Ultron Vision with the Infinity Stones?
Oh man.
Oh my god. Yeah.
Seriously?
Every episode we've had call it a post-credit scene if you want, but every episode at the end we've had a little inch where it's wait, whoa, what's that? I remember when Zombie Thanos showed up and I'm wait, come on. So there's been a lot of that stuff, but yeah, it took me too. The first time I watched this, sitting on the train going to work, and all of a sudden I see, okay, this guy showed up. Oh wait, that looks like Ultron. Oh wait, he hasn't. Wait, what's that on Infinity Stones on his chest? And then the helmet comes up, and that I didn't catch it first. I'm like, wait, that's Vision. So who knows? I mean, are they building up to something within the episodes? Could that be the Vision from the zombie episode? That losing grief from Wanda. I don't. It's so exciting to see. So I mean, maybe at the finale is really building up to something huge, so it's very exciting.
Yeah, we have that every episode, like you just said, they've had so many cliffhanger endings. There's no way that they're not following up this thread somewhere. Yeah, Ultron with the Infinity Stones and Vision on his back might be as OP as Thanos, though. That's a pretty. I was terrified the second I saw that for anybody in the MCU. I was like, that can't happen to anybody. That is a recipe for a disaster. I don't know. Ultron, I'd take that Ultron against Kang. I'd take him against Thanos. I'd take him against all of them. That was a scary moment, and I hope we get to see him again.
Yeah.
I think we're definitely going to see these story threads again, just like you'll be seeing us again here on What's TrainWreck Watching, as we have another episode. We got 2 more episodes in this season for you. Real quick, 30-second countdown, because I know Casali's got a party. I'm watching Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes animated series. They had a free episode came up my YouTube feed, so I just played it. It was the 200th episode or whatever, and they fought a guy named Zebediah Kilgrave, a.k.a. Purple Man.
Oh,
you ever heard of this guy?
Yeah. So have you guys either watched the Jessica Jones Netflix series?
Yeah. So it's funny.
Yeah.
I was twisting in my head. I was like, Kilgrave. Wait a minute. Is that David Tennant from Jessica Jones season 1? Oh my God. Yeah.
You want to talk about OP? This guy's OP.
Yeah, Kilgrave's a scary motherfucker, man.
Yeah.
He is terrifying.
Bro, he was about to have Iron Man kill Thor.
Well, I mean, yeah.
So what would the episode entail?
He had Iron Man and a couple other Avengers under his spell. They were locked in, and so they were basically they were get outing where they knew what they were doing and they were trying to stop, but it was terrible. Yeah. But great episode, and that's why we keep tuning in. I know everyone's got to go. Thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you very much for following along. Make sure you like and subscribe to the episode. Where here at What's TrainWreck Watching, it's Majka, it's Casali, it's Maniac, and it's always about next
week's
episode.